Welcome to CEF, Center for Development Research here in Bonn. Shenggen, we are very pleased to have you. This is probably the third, fourth, or fifth time that you address CEF, and each time it was a very important event for us. We hold this seminar together with BMZ and GIZ. I welcome colleagues from our neighborhood interested in food and agriculture issues. I look forward to your interventions as well. You signal when you want to. Let me really briefly introduce Shenggen Fan. The colleagues find you on the web. Shenggen has studied applied economics in Minnesota. Before that at Nanjing University in China. And he joined IFPRI in the 1990s, became a key driver of the decentralization of IFPRI. I would call it the globalization of IFPRI. When we moved those days, when I was Director General, together with Shenggen, people into country and regional offices. And thereby IFPRI became much more global, still with its headquarters in Washington, very appropriately located. Washington is a great place for think tanks. There are other things happening in that wonderful city than what you see in the evening news. And after all, U.S. development cooperation has remained strong, focused on ending hunger. Actually, there's no change with the commitment in the U.S. policy quarters. Let me say these few words about the U.S. because maybe impressions have become a bit biased. And it's great to work with U.S. universities. Shenggen, you have made tremendous contributions to drive IFPRI into areas of climate change, of governance, and I don't want to say much more. We hate to see you go from Washington to Beijing, but these seem to be the trends of our days. Shenggen Fan will take a very senior position at the Chinese University, and we hope to see you back then, from there, here at CEF, at Bonn University, and look for partnership. Shenggen, you have the floor. A warm applause to Shenggen.
Well, thank you, Joachim. And I'm very proud of being associated with the ZAF. I go to conferences quite a bit. Ethiopia, Nigeria, Beijing, and so on. And suddenly some of the young, bright students come to me, oh, I'm working at ZAF. I'm Joachim, one Braun student. So I think many of you probably had that sort of experience, introduction. And I want to thank the BMZ for supporting IFPRI for the last 45 years, right?
Shenggen, we want to have a word of welcome. I get the signal from BMZ.
Okay, go ahead.
This is very odd.
Okay.
No, it's not. I mentioned BMZ, so that's why I reminded.
You are not odd, I'm odd.
Yeah, so you know, maybe sometimes it's also a thing about age, but I think you have served the world of international agricultural research for a longer time than many of us in this room
30
are
years.
here. So I was still pooping my pants 30 years ago, but I just want to briefly say a few words on behalf of the ministry as well, because as you know, for us in the ministry, it is a core belief that we can achieve a world without hunger. It has been one of our core policy goals, and it leaves us aghast to still see that there is 150 million children undernourished, 820 million people on overall. And I want to also say a couple of words about the CJAR system, because from a policy perspective, this is very important. for us at the moment. So the CJAR system as such is one where U.S. IFPRI are already members for a long time, and we see over 50 partnership activities between the German Development Cooperation and International Agricultural Research. We have been focusing primarily in the fields of agricultural rural development, natural resource management and climate change. And given the particular urgency of arising from climate change, we also see the necessity arising from it to still nurture people in the future. We want to particularly strengthen the goals and see the necessary changes in the CJAR system. There are ambitious adjustments just on the way, and we support them wholeheartedly. So we are shaping together the vision of one CJAR that is so far a strategic group consisting of centers and donors on how to better reach the target of Sustainable Development Goal 2, Zero Hunger and beyond. So we are aiming to have a common board, also new business units that bind together several centers under one umbrella, and we also aim at having distinct research for development programs. They shall deliver on selected SDGs, have this clear strategic orientation, data-driven priority setting, and strong performance and results delivery mechanisms. And this all serves the bigger goal through structural change to achieve a better efficiency and effectiveness. And it's also serving this whole adjustment process to actually increase the attractiveness for donors, because the CJAR system did have quite some challenges in the past, and we want to use those necessary changes to actually give international agricultural research the place on the agenda that it deserves. Also, the importance of the CJAR system was just pointed out 2 weeks ago at the UN Climate Action Summit. So we as German government, we have upheld the strong support of the CJAR system. We have maintained the funding at a steady level over the past years, and that was at a time where many of the other European players couldn't. So we were very happy to maintain it at this level, and I'm very happy to say that now we in the ministry plan to even increase our support further. We want to support the excellence that is in the system, that we have in the CJAR system, but particularly with the research institutes that we have. I think you and IFPRI are a gem among the CJAR system. So this is why I also just want to use the opportunity here at CEF, because there is a strong tie between IFPRI and CEF, and also the University of Hohenheim, but also many other German NGOs that have been working with IFPRI over the past years. For example, also Welthungerhilfe is very engaged with IFPRI, and yeah, I just really am so glad that you are here. We are saddened as well to see you leave, but I really want to take the opportunity to express our sincere gratitude of the entire ministry to you today for serving international agricultural research the way you have, shown this leadership you have taken on as a role. And with that now, really without any further delay, to you and your words today, but thank you so much for all the work.
Thank you very much for such a very nice and warm words in the very beginning. So, yes, at IFPRI, we really appreciate the partnership, your great support, your financial support. The partnership you mentioned about Hohenheim, yes, we have a strong partnership with some of the professors there, Regina Birner, Manfred Zeller, and beyond. And obviously here at the ZEF, Joachim Braun, and a whole group of students and young faculty members and so on. And the CJAR we fully endorse one CGI with one vision, one strategy. But here you mentioned about our partners. I really wanted to emphasize the importance of working with our partners. Working with our partners from the very beginning, from day one. Even the current changes, I really hope we can engage with partners from the country we serve. What do they think? What do they need? What kind of CGI they are looking for? But my experience is, if you just do your own research, and then you present your results to them for them to adapt, that's not going to work. That's number one. Number two, our scientists. We have 8,000 staff. More than 2,000 scientists with PhDs, top-notch researchers. They are the best assets of CGIAR. And we needed to make sure that they will be further empowered by further changes. So I just wanted to make sure that's two principles. Working with our partners from day one and empower scientists. And I fully endorse that CGIAR concept. But how we're going to organize ourselves, I think that's still under discussion. That's, by the way, that's actually a recommendation, not the final decision yet. So for example, one board, I don't know how many units, different versions, 5 or 6 units or 2 units. So that's still under discussion. So the system reference group will make a recommendation to the System Council to endorse. And finally, it's all centers in the General Assembly, sometime in December, will vote or decide the way forward. But we will, just personally, I really support that process. Now, coming back to IFPRI, yes, I am very proud. Been at IFPRI for 25 years, CGIAR on the 30 years. I joined a CGIAR center called ISNA around 1989. That's exactly 30 years ago. And obviously I had 1 or 2 years sort of a stay in one of the universities. Otherwise, CGIAR has been my life, my work, and my passion. Now, Joachim was a DG for 7 years, so I followed almost every step he has done. So IFPRI has achieved quite a bit in many aspects. Every of this aspect has Joachim's footprint. For example, Joachim mentioned about the decentralization. I think around 2003, the IFPRI board approved that decentralization strategy. We recognize that just being Washington-centric is not going to do any good for you. So that decision was under Joachim's leadership. Obviously, I became division director around 2005 to work with Joachim and others to set up country offices. And without those country offices, without regional programs, I think today IFPRI will be very different. Maybe a very small Washington-based think tank. And Joachim mentioned Washington, the think tank, good think tank environment. Well, I think just to think is not good enough. You have to make impact on ground. So that's one footprint Joachim left. Another rapid growth at IFPRI is our nutrition. I'm very proud of that. Among all CGIAR centers, we have the largest nutrition community, 20 to 30 nutritionists. We have more nutritionists than FAO, than the World Food Program. So that I truly proud. And again, Joachim left a good footprint there. I think Joachim, well, obviously personally you have done some work on it. I remember the impact of commercialization on nutrition, somewhere in Ghana or I forgot which country, West Africa. You have to stay there. And then under Joachim's leadership, our nutrition division has really expanded. And then later on, we set up a very large CGIAR research program, agriculture for nutrition and health. So we wanted to make sure that all we do in agriculture, all we do in food, will lead to good nutrition. So that's another area that I truly proud. Now, obviously, I enjoyed every minute of IFPRI, but I think it's time for me to go back to my own country. Like Joachim, you came back to Germany. it's follows the same pattern, but not necessarily the same destination. So I think you need a good system like CGIAR and a good institution like IFPRI. I think IFPRI has appointed a new Director General, Joachim, a good researcher, a good scholar, and I'm very confident that he will lead to IFPRI to new height. On the other hand, I also think IFPRI is very strong in its institution. We have strong division directors. And another thing I did after Joachim left is to create another layer of management, theme leaders, because IFPRI has grown so much. By the way, just in terms of revenue, IFPRI is the largest CGIAR centers. Somebody joked with me, why policy needs so much money? Well, policy research needs money. It's not just a crop breeding. So for that, the support from the donors has been so critical, including BMZ, Gates Foundation, U.S.A, more and more from the emerging economies, India and China. So this strong institution, sometimes I joke, I said, if I take 1 year off as a holiday, if we can run without the DG very well, maybe even better. If I don't spend all the money, I don't need to be paid. So I'm very confident. I also wish you to support IFPRI new leadership and to make sure that IFPRI continue to move to a very high level. Now, so today, I just wanted to give you some of the sort of reflection on what we have been doing or what we are doing right now, particularly in forming policies, institutions, and the governance for healthy and sustainable food systems. So I will just try to focus on several areas. And I have several slides prepared by my team. So I will go through some of them. I want to focus on a couple of points. And one is, well, obviously hunger, malnutrition, overweight, obesity are emerging crises. And climate change is another big crisis. Now how we're going to reshape our food system to really address, on the one hand, health, nutrition for everybody, on the other, climate change and natural resource management. And I want to emphasize the importance of technology, the importance of policies, institutional governance. We know that technologies are important. The whole CGIAR is still very much focused on technologies. But I wanted to give a strong message here. The policy, institutional governance sometimes are equally important, if not more important. And then some of the new IFPRI research topics. So this is not new to you. I have presented this in many places. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are facing multiple burdens of malnutrition. So number one burden is, yes, we still have lots of hungry people. 800 million people are hungry. Although I challenge that number, but it's still the case that many parts of the world are suffering from hunger, particularly Africa and South Asia. One of my passions, after I go back to China, is to really get the hunger number right. And some of the hunger number for certain countries are absolutely not right. The number for China, 100 million hungry people. For India, more than 200 million. So that's sort of well, the fact is, there are still enough hungry people there, but if we don't get the number right, we might misallocate our resources, set the wrong priorities. The second burden is lack of micronutrients. Zinc, iron, vitamin A, we call it hidden hunger. 2 billion people are suffering from that. Then overweight, obesity, again 2 billion people are suffering from that. So we're not on track. It's SDG goals. So look at the undernourished population, so-called hunger number. So business as usual, we still have several hundred million people. There's no way to get it to zero by 2030. And child stunting, we have 149 million right now. There's no way to get zero. So business as usual, we will still have 100 million stunted children by 2030. Then again, prevalence of overweight, obesity, you will see it's increasing. So when the SDG 2 was introduced, there was a slogan called zero malnutrition. I said, if you include overweight, obesity as part of malnutrition, zero malnutrition is not possible. Or maybe just like you guys, I know in Germany, you redefine malnutrition as hunger as well as lack of micronutrients. Yeah, that's possible. But if you include overweight, obesity, there's no way to achieve that. We're actually going in the wrong direction. Well, there are many other challenges, mega trends that will affect our food system. We know that conflict, hunger, famine, urbanization, climate change, rural crisis. But here, I also wanted to look at that question mark, changing global landscape, anti-globalization, anti-trade, anti-science, anti-facts. This is something will hit us very hard. And nobody believes, particularly in Washington area, if you bring some facts, some data, they will bring you alternative facts. So this is something worries us quite a bit. Now, the food system transformation is very critical. I'm also so happy that the CGIAR uses food system. And we began to use the food system a long time back. PhD to Anderson, how many years ago? 40 years ago, 35 years ago, used the food system. And 10 years ago, when I took over from Joachim, our new strategy, or our strategy at that time, we use food system. So we are very proud that we use the food system well ahead of everybody. Really bring every piece together to tackle some of the complexities we face today. So I wanted to focus on policy institutions and governance, some of the controversial issues, or some of the hot topics right now. And one is, okay, how can we make sure that our policies really help to promote nutritious, sustainable, and healthy diets? I was a commission member of the Eat Mindset report, about a year ago, probably about 10 months ago in January, this January, we published that report. It's called Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food System. So first time we wanted to look at our diets. What you eat, the key message is actually very simple. What you eat really matters to your health, and also matters to our environment and the climate. Okay, at micro level, you can make your choice. But at macro level, what do we do? Different policies. At IFPRI, we made some very drastic recommendations. One is, can we tax carbon-intensive and nutrient-poor food? Yes, there were some discussions or even implementation of sugar tax in Mexico, in many other countries, even in some of the cities in the U.S. But can we also tax something that contributes to our environment negatively, particularly emits low carbon emission? Carbon tax. Well, carbon tax on food. And how would you do that? So IFPRI has done some study to look at that issue, particularly using our model, impact model. So today the model has become so complex. So Joachim, when you were there, we only have maybe one sector, agricultural, 30 commodities. Today, we include, water was already there, but nutrition and health is part of that model now. So using that model, we'll be able to simulate some of the big trends, big policy changes, and their impact on the environment, health, and nutrition. So what we did is, okay, what about if we impose some of the carbon tax on certain food products, beef, mutton, pork, chicken, and so on. But we don't end there. If you just contribute that revenue to the general tax, it's not sharp enough to improve nutrition and health. What about if we use the money, the tax revenue, to support the production of healthy, nutritious food, fruits, vegetables, beans? Whether it's research, value chain development, amount information. And then we found that by doing that, every year more than 100,000 lives will be saved. Obviously, in the long run, probably more lives will be saved. So tax meet in terms of their externalities of environment, climate change, and health to some extent. And they use that money to promote production of healthy, nutritious foods. And obviously, nutrition targets social protection. There are so many nutrition, so many so-called social protection programs, safety nets. Ethiopia, Bangladesh, now even China, huge amount of money. The World Bank is also promoting large coverage of social protection. Well, income transfer, obviously, is great, it's good. When the market works, when they have access to a certain market, when they have good knowledge, the reality is they don't. So under this circumstances, how can we make sure that the targeted social protection will lead to good nutrition, health outcome for the family, for the children, and their wives? So combined transfer program with nutrition communication, change their knowledge, change their behavior. So in Bangladesh, we worked with our local partners. We started with our local partners, WFP, randomized controlled trial, focus on women, change women's behavior, feeding behavior, sanitation behavior, and so on. We found that one-time intervention, no impact. Two meetings helped. 3 times, better. 4 times is a maximum. So if you want to be engaged with women to change their behavior, you've got to repeat the intervention. Meetings, workshops, or seminars together, we found that after 4 times, the impact is maximum. So after the experiment, we found that the child stunting in the control group has come down about 4 percentage points per year. So now the stunting rate in Bangladesh is about 37. If they can multiply this to the whole country, then they will eliminate child stunting in the next 10 years. It's a huge impact. Well, obviously, we have some other social protection work in Ethiopia, in Nigeria, in Ghana, not even in China. Now, investment priorities. Well, we said we use saved money, let's say, to promote productive, nutritious, healthy food. That's great. But even now, every day, every second, every minute, someone will actually calculate every minute. We spend a huge amount of money on subsidies. Every year it's about $500 to $700 billion. I think the GIZ budget is $2 billion a year. But the whole subsidies by agriculture sector is $500 to $700 billion a year. And the major spend actually was China in 2015. India, Brazil, Indonesia, and so on. So to me, these subsidies are usually geared to support rice, wheat, and maize, self-sufficiency of stable foods, fertilizers, water, electricity, and output price. So these subsidies, we know that from economics point of view, they are not economic efficient, they're not sustainable. We use too much water, too much fertilizers, overuse of fertilizers. We emit enough carbons to the air. By the way, the application of nitrogen emits a lot of damaging nitrous oxide into the air. And also, they don't produce healthy, nutritious food, which is still stable food, rice, wheat, and maize. That's part of the problem why in Egypt, Clemens, another great German researcher, he found that the Egyptians are overweight or obese partly because of the government subsidies. Cheap wheat, the cheap wheat imported from the U.S., or cheap subsidies of water, fertilizer, and so on. So can we reform them? 500 to 700. Again, if we just take away all this money and put it back in the general revenue, it's not going to help much. Again, can we use that money to support R&D, infrastructure development, value chain development for nutritious healthy foods? And so we formed some of the coalition together with IFPRI, together with OECD and a couple of other agencies, try to provide a knowledge support to reform these policies. By the way, Tuckman and others also try to form a group together with Ashraf Marti to really push, let's say, Chinese, Indians, maybe Brazilians in meetings to reform their policy. They are willing to do it. They just need knowledge, need data, need support. And my experience is, don't just engage with the ministers of agriculture. China in 2015 they begin to change. It's not from agriculture, it's from the Minister of Finance. So he recognized, oh, China provided more than $200 billion, $250 billion subsidies in agriculture. And he was a good economist, by the way. He said, hey, what is the impact on nutrition, on growth, on environment? And he didn't find any positive evidence. And he made a public speech somewhere in Tsinghua University. And that caused a huge debate in China. Well, we actually argued that for a long time, but nobody listened. But it's Minister of Finance that made a difference. So you can see over the last 3 or 4 years, they begin to shift all these subsidies to income support, to environmental improvement, to rural revitalization. And more needs to be done because there are still lots of subsidies directly linked to production throughout also. Now, as I said, I was engaged with the International report. So that report produced a dietary guideline for everybody in terms of your nutrition, health, but also in terms of environment and climate change. The recommendation is we needed to, from a nutrition perspective, we needed to eat more whole wheat bread, more brown rice. I have changed myself, so if possible, I always eat brown rice. I always eat whole wheat bread. They're very tasty, nutritious, healthy. That's one. Second, we needed to eat fruits and vegetables. On average, we needed to double the consumption of fruits and vegetables in the whole world. Third, we need to eat more nuts, but not too much. As you know, nuts actually using much water. But some nuts are good for your health, for your heart. And actually, I heard that it's also good for reducing your weight. It's good news. But another important recommendation is we must drastically reduce the consumption of red meat. We just simply eat too much red meat. Red meat is not good for your health. Red meat is not good for our economy. Can we do that? Can we reduce consumption by 2/3? In the U.S., the per capita consumption of meat is more than 100 pounds per day. If you look at that guideline, you only need 30 pounds. So basically, you triple the optimal amount. So that has implication on our research. If you look at that chart, you will see that by 2050, if we wanted to promote healthy, sustainable diets, which means we need to produce more nuts, we needed to produce more beans, obviously more fish, less with red meat, and so on. That has implication for CGI research, that has implication for national agricultural research system. Obviously, I don't want to apply this to the whole world. In Africa, many children, many women still need to eat more meat. Animal protein is so critical for children's growth. But here, for Europe, for US, Canada, Australia, or even coastal China, I was so surprised to hear that in certain parts of China, just pork consumption more than 100 pounds per person per year. So, and reduce food waste, food loss. Well, that's clear. So IFPRI has a pretty big program. Maximo Torero, I think he often comes over here, right? So he was a champion in developing that program. Now, IFPRI and FAO have formed a knowledge partnership to bring data, bring good practices for developing countries to reduce food waste, food loss. So we have some case studies in Malawi, in Cambodia, in Guatemala, to look at where the food has been wasted or lost. We found that even before the food of grains moved off farm. We already lost quite a bit. 6%, 9%. Then processing part, storage, that part also lose quite a bit. In terms of household consumption, we don't lose much for developing countries. So if you have all this information by country, by different segments of the value chain, then you will be able to optimize your interventions, your investment to tackle that challenge. By the way, I'm also a champion of the SDG 12.3. If you remember all the SDGs, 12.3, the reduction of the food waste by half from now to 2030. So I'm very much committed to do that. And so lots of innovation that can be done, including some of the German innovations. I think I visited the, I think the one student from Zentrum from somewhere. She innovated some sort of sauna-powered milk storage. I think we were there together. Yes. So that's sort of even small scale, simple, low cost innovation can really help save, to preserve the quality of the food. And I think CGIAR here must take this on. We waste one third of our food, and that one third is more nutritious, healthy food. Policy, institution, governance, so critical to do that. Now, building institutional capacity. Again, I think doing this dialogue with some of the journalists, I just cannot emphasize enough on this. Again, when the CGIAR begin to launch a new structure, capacity must be part of that work. Unfortunately, for the last 10 years, so I can be a bit critical of CGIAR now, I'm leaving. For the last 10 years, we have not invested at all in capacity building. Look at all the CRP, so-called CGIAR research programs. No money is on capacity building. No indicator, no measures of capacity building. In Africa, if we don't work with them to build the capacity, you just present your research results to them. They're not going to take on. So, partnership from day one, capacity building from day one, critical for CGIAR. Now, here I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One is nutrition capacity. It is still the case that our extension agents don't know much about nutrition at all. It's still the case that even the medical doctors have no knowledge about nutrition. So can we mainstream nutrition into our extension, into, well, obviously the private sector, into our policy, and so on. So if we really pay attention to one of the huge challenges on nutrition. Obviously, IFPRI has innovated lots of different approaches to enhance capacity, to enhance the policy implementation. And we have lots of cases that in certain countries pay for performance. So unless you show us how you have performed, we're not going to pay. And delivery units integrate performance contract with improvement, inter-sector coordination, and so on. So the institutional capacity building has become a very important part of IFPRI's work, particularly in our development strategy governance. So we have several political scientists and also the scientists who have worked on implementation. So now there is science on implementation science, on decentralized structure, government capacity, even nutrition. Now the gender gaps strengthen institutional capacity. IFPRI has worked with Oxford University, U.S.A, in innovating so-called women's empowerment in agriculture, WEA. I'm happy to report to you that more than 60 countries have already adopted that concept. And I wish one day the FAO report, SOFA report, will report there's a WEA, Women's Empowerment Index, in agriculture, in food and nutrition, in the annual report, so we can really see which country has performed better, which country has improved. So there we look at women's decision-making power, their access to assets, and control, the use of income, leadership in community, particularly the engagement in the political network, and time use. The one thing I learned, or we learned, is in many cases technologies do not benefit women. My mother, unfortunately, he passed away just last February. When the Green Revolution technology introduced to my village, it's IR8, by the way. It's IR8, it's one variety from IFPRI. So it has very short growing period. So instead of 2 crops, we were able to grow 3 crops because in a short duration. But 3 crops demand more inputs, more water, but more time as well. Who spend the time? Planting, harvesting, weeding, it's water. So my mother used to work maybe 10 hours a day before the Green Revolution. After the Green Revolution, after that technology was introduced to our village, she worked 14 hours a day during the peak season because you really needed to catch up on time. If you cannot plant the rice on time for second crop, you will lose it. And when the frost comes before the rice begins to flower, you lose everything. You have 0 harvest. So they work very hard. In the morning, the whole field is yellow. It's rice. In the evening, it has to be green. So you harvest it, plow it, irrigate it, and transplant it. Everything has to be done in 24 hours. Women's time. So, if all women spend more time on certain farming because technologies, they have no time to take care of their children, their family. Nutritious, healthy foods, health care, or better sanitation. So, political economy and policy making. I'm happy to report to you that Joachim, our new Director General, is an expert on political economy. Why good policies have not been made, why good policy have not been implemented, why good policy have not led to good outcome. I mean, we say this too much, too often, even for the last 30, 40 years, that we still have not improved at all. But amazingly, we learned quite a bit. I think 2 things. One is, instead of engaging with politicians, you know that Braun, Isha's husband, I used to visit him every year. He was the vice chair of the planning commission. He said, I know, changing this policy is good for us, particularly subsidy policy, but don't convince me. I'm responsible for getting more votes for the Congress party. So, well, we know the communicating with politicians is good, but not good enough. And Regina Bierman did some solid study to look at a couple of states, subsidies. How can we really move that needle forward? We learned the lesson that we must engage with farmers. Farmers saw they benefited from subsidies. Actually, they have not. If they have that knowledge, information, they will push the whole political system to make positive change. So that's one thing I learned. Another thing I learned is using social media to engage with citizens. Again, like the GMO issues, I know the hot topic. GMO issue. I think why we had enough setback in China and India on GMO issues. By the way, 15 years ago, the Chinese citizens' support of GMO is 90%. Today, less than 50%. Why is that? For social media. We become complacent. We thought we just generate good technology, good information, and then the government, smart government, will just use it. Not sure. So how can we really use the social media to provide our narratives, to communicate everything to populace or every citizen, to change that political economy issues? I think, again, your Sweden actually did some study to look at how social media have affected some of the policy discourses. I thought it was very exciting. Well, I just wanted to mention that, yes, we have used food system approach to look at the food supply that could be sustainable, climate resilient. We look at the diets. We look at the trade issues, market issues. We also look at the governance, capacity building, country support. But after 10 years, we used some of our unrestricted fund, which is not easy to rebuild anymore because donors do not provide any unrestricted support. Everything is restricted. But nevertheless, we used some of the reserves. Your team helped to build. I helped to build for another $5 million. We spent $1 million from our reserve to launch some of truly strategic long-term research agenda and current donors are wanting to support. Number one is food industry for people and the planet. I think we missed big picture if we don't look at the food industry. And that's policy, regulations, governance related to food industry. As you know, donors are one of on that. So we provide some support to really look at landscape. We did a scoping study. How can we engage with our private sector, the food companies, to make sure that their practice, their is a commercial business, will be sustainable, will provide healthy, nutritious foods for people. Urban food system for better diets, nutrition and health. Our traditional donors very much focus on rural areas, farmers, but as urbanization takes off very quickly, hungry people, undernourished people will move to cities, probably much faster than general population. And finally, climate resilient food systems. We wanted to use a value chain or food system approach to look at the carbon emission of every part of the food system, by commodities, by segments of the whole value chain. So I really hope in the next 3 or 4 years, all this will become large programs. So we invested $1 million. I hope in the next 2 or 3 years, each one of them will be $10 million program. Together, $30 million, that's rate of return is 1 to 30. That's the minimum at least. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Shenggen, thanks a lot for your extremely stimulating lecture with lots of words of wisdom in them. And thank you also for your heartwarming words of thanks from the German government to Shenggen. He truly deserves that. We have unfortunately a deadline set by a flight schedule of Shenggen and his entourage. Shenggen, can we take 10 minutes?
We have time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 minutes or 15
Your
minutes.
questions or comments need to be very brief, and your answers too. So please, let's collect a few. Did you also want to say a few words from GIZ's perspective? Mr. Nolting would do that? Okay, can we do that towards the end then?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, colleagues, your for the time being, last opportunity to challenge Shenggen.
I will be back.
Go ahead. Please go ahead. 1, 2.
Okay, thank you for this nice presentation. My question is, okay, the goals covered by the SDGs, I mean, everyone can agree upon. But in your opinion, what are some of the key challenges or constraints in achieving these goals? I mean, it's a very general question, but
okay, if you take notes, Till, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Fan. You're not only a researcher, but also a policy advisor. Now BMZ and GIZ is sitting here. From your point of view, which is the most urgent issue that you talked about, and where could you get the biggest bang for the buck? So if BMZ could invest all its 10 billion euro, if GIZ could invest all its 3 billion euros, where would be the best place to put it?
Okay. Anyone in that corner? Someone here? Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Also, and a question about, for changing systems, the need for long-term research. You can't do it in 2 or 3 years. also with partnerships. Any ideas of how to move our donor research system toward longer term operations?
Okay. Would you take those three first?
Sure. Yeah. Well,
Maybe better stick here to the microphone.
Oh,
There's a microphone here.
Okay. Yeah, the constraints to SDGs, obviously there are so many. But I want to focus on maybe SDG 2, and to some extent SDG 1 and SDG 13. These are all linked, right? So the most constraints, obviously it varies by country. I think for Asia, East Asia, South Asia, achieving zero hunger in terms of calorie may not be a big challenge. Well, obviously we still have to do more work. China, that actually number is totally off the mark. India, off the mark. I'm more concerned about Africa. Africa, the climate change, lack of capacity, lack of investment will be a challenge for achieving SDG 2. But here I also wanted to make sure that SDG 2 is not just a hunger. All dimensions of malnutrition, particularly lack of micronutrients there, I think one is knowledge information. Let everybody know that eating enough food is not good enough. Eating the right food, diverse diets of malnutrition is very critical. So that's the knowledge one. The second one is our policy. Our policy must promote more diverse food production, so not just the rice, wheat, and maize. So to me, that's a big challenge, particularly related to SDG 2. And SDG 13, as we have already discussed, the agricultural food system is part of the problem. We need 25 to 30% of carbon emission. How can we really transform our food system? On one hand, our productive practices, on the other, our diets. Absolutely very critical. Now, so from one of the most urgent issues, what is the best investment or best bet, particularly for BMZ? As I said, well, obviously innovation will be key. Our natural resources are limited. We're facing all the challenges. Innovations, I think supporting innovations will be very critical. Here I also wanted to emphasize partnership. Again, partnership from day one. If we don't work with them in the day one and just present, okay, what you got, whether it's technology, policy recommendation, after you have done that, it's not going to work. They have to be part of the process, the whole research innovation process. For BMZ, I think particularly on CGIR, I do think long-term, large-scale support very critical. Here, sometimes I heard the sort of a conflict with, on the one hand, they want to focus on system. On the other hand, you also wanted to promote centers, or centers, you want to work with centers. So I think the CGIR change must ensure that some of these centers, strong centers, continue to prosper. Without that, you have a strong system, but with centers, that's not a strong system. Now, the longer run support from donors, because it's long-term issues, right? And yes, I know U.S., Europe, they make annual budget allocation. That's why we face these challenges. Foundations can make long-term commitment. So I think from CGIR side, we need to think, can we engage more with foundations? Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, and lots of family-based foundation in the US are coming up from China too. To avoid this sort of political cycle. You mentioned about the U.S.A. Yes, U.S.A. is great. They're still the largest donor. But the annual approval is really a pain. Sometimes the fiscal year finishes in October. They will tell you we have the money in September. I cannot make that plan. So we take enough risk. We just assume U.S.A. funding will come. Although the decision will be made in September to have your budget for that year, not for next year. Huge risk. Could you imagine if 1 year the administration can really push the Congress not to fund international aid? You know that there's struggle every year. This is the Congress always push it back. In 1 year that happens, I think the whole CGI system will be in trouble. Serious trouble. You're talking about $130 million. If they don't come, European Union has already done it for the last 2 years. You see, Tony's with Tony.
Yeah.
They have not funded us for the last 2 years.
No.
If U.S.A. has followed them, we are in serious trouble. Anyway, let's have another round.
Yeah.
Maybe you're more positive.
While you are contemplating your questions, Shenggen, we listened very carefully to your remarks on 1CGIR. And you mentioned the 8,000 scientists, which is about 3% of global science engaged in food, nutrition, and agriculture. So there are some, and you emphasized empower the scientists. What is optimal size of science institutions? I think is a big issue. We have learned, at least in academies and in universities, that optimal size is not big. It's more or less the same debate as optimal farm size. So do you have thoughts about that? I think the CGIR, entering into the debate of 1CGIR, needs to be careful on how to craft the inner structure. We just talked about the centers need to be vibrant. Could you reflect a bit further? I mean, as you said, you can, and you always could and did freely talk, be inside or on your way out. So how would you see the structure of a vibrant CGIR? The food systems approach, the inter-academy partnership very much endorsed. We are headed in 2021 towards a food systems summit spearheaded by FAO and WHO. So that has come in, but what structure CGIR?
I think if we continue to produce green revolution technologies, I think today's CGIR is too big. However, if we embrace to tackle some of the challenges, to reshape food system, to mitigate the climate change, to tackle hunger, malnutrition, obviously youth employment, other things, I think CGIR is much too small. Bill Gates wants to have $2 billion CGIR. And we know that will happen. But from IFPRI side, they came up with after we had pretty strong growth, or not, it's just coordination, or something happened. 10% growth. Every year my board asks me, you're growing so fast. What is the optimal size? The same question I said, look, really depends on what you want to do, what question you want to address. If you wanted to broaden your research scope, nutrition, climate change, I think IFPRI is too small. This is climate change itself. Money is there, work is there, demand is there, nutrition. So I said, in fact, too small is a problem. Too small, the transaction cost is very high, and there's also skill effect. When you're big, you have more researchers doing more research, you add this on. So I don't have an answer to you, but for IFPRI, right now, the revenue, I think we are the largest CGIR centers, about 130 million on revenue. If under the change, if there's a policy cluster, 200 million is not too small. Or not too big, sorry.
Well, it's an interesting story which you pointed. When I came to IFPRI from Bonn in 2001, it was 25 million. Thanks to our loyal donors, when I left it was 65 million, and you brought it to 130, 150. And the board was always jittery about it, because shrinking is more difficult than growing. So these are wise people who tried to stop us, but you were unstoppable. In the meantime, you have thought about your question. Alicia, please. Could I see a sign of hands? We can take maybe another 7 minutes, but we want to listen to you as well. 1, 2, and then I call on GIZ. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You talked about eating the right food, but depending on the location, what is right can be totally different and sometimes even contradictory in terms of environmental impact and in terms of per unit cost. Sometimes if in developed countries, you talked about carbon tax on meat. In developing countries, it could be just the opposite. Perhaps we need to bring down the price of meat to achieve SDG 2. But doing that, for example, even within developing countries could create externalities, like we have already overweight problem, and bringing down, it could increase that again. What do you think about addressing this kind of distributional effects, which may have contradictory outcomes?
Okay. There was one more, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Very insightful talk. What kind of agriculture do you envision for a sustainable food system? And in particular, what role do you see for industrial agriculture, which is fundamentally unsustainable in many respects?
One more here.
Okay, yes.
Just adding to what Alicia said, what would be the point of view of the IFPRI in regarding this meat reduction, which is very strict, and now that also animal welfare has been on debate, besides the ecological and nutrition?
And I ask you a nasty question. What went wrong with the peer review on the Eat Lancet study? The science community really has stepped up to the plate and said there's so much flaw in it. We want to listen to you now from GIZ perspective. You can come up here and then Shenggen can set up.
Sure. Just let me know how much time I have so I know where to
3 minutes.
cut my 10-page concluding remarks. My name is Mark Neuting. I'm heading at GIZ a section which covers all programs dealing with agriculture policy, food and nutrition security and rural development. And maybe just to start with, to get the figures right, the gentleman mentioned some figures over there. So the 10 billion you mentioned, this is the sum that that BMZ actually invests in international cooperation in total, not only in agriculture, food and nutrition security or rural development. And parts of it go into the special initiative One World No Hunger, on average 1.5 million per year, and not all those 1.5 million go to GIZ. So unfortunately we haven't reached the 3 billion yet, but we are getting there. So Sheng, Professor von Braun, Ms. Majewski, Mr. Denker, dear colleagues, guests, I think this has been an extremely useful and interesting lecture and an interesting discussion. I wish that we had more time actually to reflect on points that were just raised by many of the discussants. But I think that we at GIZ strongly believe that sustainable food systems play a role in the age of climate change. So healthy, affordable food systems that actually can serve the rural poor in our partner countries are the key and will be the key in all our development interventions. We have already a number of ongoing projects and programs in this regard, and I hope that in the future we can actually expand on those programs. I would like to take the opportunity and to thank CEF, Professor Braun, and particularly my colleagues from the BEAF program, which is financed by BMZ, for organizing this event and for facilitating it. And I would also like to take the opportunity for some words of appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Fan and its work and his work at IFPRI and with IFPRI. IFPRI has been mentioned earlier already as a very important CGIAR organization and institution, and it has always been a very extremely important partner for GIZ in the CGIAR system, but also beyond the CGIAR system and the BMZ support for the CGIAR system. So I remember a couple of events, Sheng, where we have been sitting together at Brussels level doing some joint advocacy for food systems, for rural governance, for rural development, and this has been extremely helpful and important. And we will continue in collaborating with IFPRI, even under the new leadership, even though it's really a shame that you are leaving IFPRI. So the success of collaboration not just depends on institutions, always on people. And with you, we are really losing a very approachable, a very honest, a very committed partner at IFPRI. But luckily, we are not losing you as a colleague, so you are just shifting positions. And as you have explained yesterday at GIZ to us, it's a kind of logical step you are taking, which mirrors also the professional career of Professor Braun. So going back to China seems to be the logical consequence, and the circle is closing. And I'm very sure that our paths will cross again. And I take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of all GIZ colleagues, which is quite a number. And we are all looking forward to collaborating with you in your new position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Let me first address the international report, the healthy, sustainable diets. That's a global guideline. Immediately after that report was released, I published a blog saying that we need differentiated approach. For very rich countries, yes, we reduce meat consumption. But for poor Africans, South Asian, we need more meat consumption. Now we are in the process of developing local guidelines, not just a global one. That's a global one. The purpose of that article actually is to create a debate. Initially, they invited me to come. I said, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not an environmentalist. But economics can bring us two together. So that's why some of the policy recommendations there, it's more from us, modeling effort, good economic research, and so on. Now we have a top researcher, Derek Heddy. He will have an article forthcoming, and that's that global health, cost and the price of eating an sustainable healthy diet. It's already coming. The guy is so quick. We just published this article 10 months ago. He's already has an article forthcoming. There they really zoom in the cost and the price, affordability of eating an diet. So we don't want to give a one-size-fits-all solution, one-size-fits-all diet. It has to be localized. So let's say in my hometown, what would be healthy diet? Maybe fish, fruits, I suppose, a little bit of brown rice, or maybe some, I don't know. But in the high mountain, Himalaya, people don't have fish. But there, you need to look at the local production foods. Well, trade is there, but trade is also not easy to do, more expensive. Now the vertical farming or modern farming, I think, again, we are open to that. We do have a project evaluating the environmental impact. It's not necessarily black and white. Like in Singapore, they use a solar energy to power the greenhouse to produce vegetables. So 20% of that is in Singapore, are produced by themselves in greenhouses. So if you look at the climate impact, I don't know whether it's bigger or smaller than the traditional farming on the ground. Well, obviously smallholders have not benefited. But in terms of environmental impact, we don't know. There's another big technology I just wanted to mention here briefly. Impossible meat. Impossible burger, impossible fish, impossible pork. And this, from my understanding, they can reduce environmental footprints by 80%, 90%. Water, land, maybe even greenhouse gas emissions. Do you like it? You can taste it. I taste it. I like it. Good. Yeah, it's good. But should we open our mind? I think we should. You know, as a researcher, and who knows? But the nutrition impact is a question I have. if the children begin to eat this sort of, plant-based meat, I don't know whether we have similar impact like truly animal protein. Because one thing, that's why I don't like purely the vegan or vegan or vegetarian, because sometimes it's very difficult, very expensive to get all the micronutrients to your body by just eating vegetables or by having a vegetarian diet. It might be easy just to have small, I don't say too much, small amount of animal protein. Again, we are doing some study on that in Africa. Protein is coming back now, we're always doing that. So open our mind to all these technologies. Now, so I'm moving back to China next January. So I'm leaving the CGI system. Actually, I'm quite happy. I think the new life, right? I think it's good for IFPRI to have a fresh, new thinking. Yeah, but although we're doing okay, maybe a new person, new thinking, a new challenge. If we have been doing okay, we do it. If not, do some adjustment or even change it. I do think it's a great opportunity. For me, yes, it's a great opportunity for me too. And after 35 years, I go back to my home country, almost like a new country, a different country. So I'm very excited about that. So physically, I'm leaving CGI. I'm leaving the work I'm doing. But my heart remains with you guys. The commitment, dedication to work for 100 people. It's definitely I grew up undernourished, poor, hungry. I don't want to see anybody who will suffer from that. So come to visit me in Beijing, and I will come here wearing a different hat.
Thank you so much, Shenggen. We will take you up on that. We will see each other here and there. As you know, German Minister of Foreign Affairs has appointed me to the China-German Council for the next 4 years. So if you don't come, I look you up there. I was just there. There's life after CTIR. And the friendship within the CTIR among the scientists, the managers, is a huge asset. It's a huge asset. Yes, there are conflicts, but there are, like Amartya Sen would have called them, cooperative conflicts, aiming for the higher goal, which you have just outlined. I want to thank those who have made this event possible. Ms. Majewski, thank you for speaking to us from BMZ, the Nolting, Ms. Lindecke, and others. We can have more such events, but this is a rare one. So, Shenggen, we will miss you, so don't miss out to come with your words of wisdom from Beijing. Thanks again.
All right.